They say nothing good ever happens after midnight. But some nights, the kind you never forget, something happens that changes you forever. These are 3 true stories sent in by people who swear what they saw after midnight was real. So, if you're watching this in the dark, maybe check the clock. Because if it's past 12, it might already be too late. I used to live alone in a small apartment on the edge of a quiet Michigan town. It wasn't in the best neighborhood, but it was cheap, and at the time, that's all I cared about. This happened in the winter of 2020, when I worked night shifts at a small printing shop. I'd usually get home around 12:30 or 1 a.m., grab a quick shower, and crash into bed. One night, though, I didn't make it to sleep. As soon as I turned off the lights, I heard it, a soft tapping sound coming from my bedroom window. At first, I thought it was ice or maybe branches in the wind. But when I got closer, I realized the window was slightly open, and the tapping wasn't random. It was in a pattern. 3 taps, a pause, then 3 again. I pulled the curtain aside, expecting to see nothing, maybe a loose shutter. But what I saw made my stomach drop. There was a hand, a pale hand, pressed against the outside of the glass. I jumped back and froze. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. After a few seconds, the hand slid down and disappeared. I waited, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No movement. I called the police right away. They showed up 20 minutes later, checked around the property, and told me they didn't find anyone. They said it was probably a drunk or a prank. I didn't sleep that night. The next night, I came home a bit earlier, around midnight, and double-checked all the locks. I even pushed furniture against the window. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a whisper. It was faint, like someone just outside the glass. I couldn't make out words at first, just a low, raspy sound. Then I heard it clearly. "Let me in." I froze. The whisper came again, louder. "Please, let me in." I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, pointing it at the window. But before I could even get up, something pushed from the outside. The window rattled violently, like someone was trying to pry it open. I ran out of the room, locked myself in the bathroom, and called 911 again. The police arrived fast this time. They found fresh footprints in the snow, leading from the trees straight to my window, and back into the woods. They followed the tracks but never found anyone. The next morning, when I finally worked up the courage to check, there was something scratched into the glass. It said, "Next time, don't look." I moved out 2 weeks later. The landlord said no one had ever reported break-ins before, but when I told him which apartment I'd been in, his face went pale. He said the last tenant, a woman, had moved out in the middle of the night after someone broke her window and tried to climb in. She'd never come back for her things. I've always loved late-night drives. There's something peaceful about empty roads, no traffic, no noise. Just you, your music, and the hum of the car. But after what happened that night, I don't drive after midnight anymore. This was in the summer of 2018. I was 24 at the time and had just moved back home after college. I worked the closing shift at a 24-hour diner just off Highway 23, so I'd usually get out around 12:30 or 1 a.m. That night was like any other. It was humid and the sky was moonless, just pitch black except for the occasional flicker of lightning far off in the distance. I remember driving with my windows halfway down, listening to an old playlist, when I noticed headlights behind me. They weren't close, just a pair of distant lights that had been following for a while. At first, I didn't think much of it. It was a highway after all. But after 15 minutes, I realized something was off. No matter how many turns I took, the car stayed right behind me. Always the same distance, never passing, never falling too far back. I told myself it was just coincidence. Maybe they lived in the same area. But when I took a narrow back road that I knew only led toward a few old farmhouses, the car turned too. That's when my heart started racing. I slowed down slightly to let them pass, but they slowed down too. I sped up. They sped up. It was just the two of us now, surrounded by miles of trees on both sides, not a single house or streetlight in sight. Then, out of nowhere, their high beams flicked on. Blinding white light filled my mirror, flooding the inside of my car. I couldn't see a thing. I slammed the gas pedal and started praying my old Corolla wouldn't stall. For the next minute, they stayed glued to my bumper, those lights so bright it felt like they were inside the car with me. Then, as suddenly as they turned them on, they shut them off. And when I looked back, the road was empty. No car. No lights. Nothing. I remember pulling over to the side, shaking, trying to make sense of what just happened. There was nowhere for them to go. No turnoffs, no side roads. Just dense forest. I waited a few minutes, then kept driving, slower this time, scanning the mirrors every few seconds. When I finally reached the main road again, I started to calm down. That's when I saw it. In the rearview mirror. Headlights. The same car. But this time, it wasn't following me from behind. It was parked on the shoulder, facing the opposite direction. And as I passed, I caught a glimpse of the driver. He was sitting completely still, both hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead, like he'd been waiting. I don't know why, but I looked into my side mirror again, and that's when I saw him turn his head slowly toward me. Just before I lost sight of him, his headlights turned on again. I panicked and hit 80 down the stretch until I reached a gas station. It was the only one open that late, and I ran inside to ask the clerk if I could stay for a bit. He gave me this look, half confused, half concerned, and said, "You're the third person this month to come in here saying that." Apparently, other drivers had reported being followed by a black sedan on the same road. Police patrolled a few times, but they never found anything. Some said it was a local prankster. Others thought it was someone trying to scare women driving alone. But here's the thing, when I described the car, the clerk said the last sighting was over 10 years ago, after a fatal crash near the same stretch of woods. A man had lost control of his black sedan around 2 a.m. and hit a tree. He died instantly. People say on quiet nights, drivers still see his headlights appear behind them, following until they reach the same corner where he crashed. I never saw that car again, but every time I pass that road now, even during the day, I can't help but glance in the mirror, because for a split second, I always think I see those headlights coming closer. I used to work the night shift at a small IT company in Portland. Most nights were quiet, just me, a few blinking server lights, and the hum of cooling fans echoing down the hallway. That job was boring, but it helped me pay rent on a small one-bedroom house I was renting out on the edge of town. The place was old, built sometime in the 60s, but I liked the quiet. One night in November, something happened that still makes me leave every light on before I go to bed. It was around 2:30 in the morning when my office phone rang. That was weird because we didn't get calls that late unless something broke down. I answered saying, "Tech support, this is Daniel." There was silence. Then I heard breathing. At first I thought maybe it was just static, but no. It was breathing. Slow, heavy, like someone standing close to the phone but saying nothing. I kept saying, "Hello," over and over, but whoever it was didn't speak. After maybe 15 seconds, the line went dead. I checked the caller ID out of habit, and that's when my stomach dropped. It said, "Incoming call home." My home phone. I froze. I lived alone. I hadn't given my landline number to anyone. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe someone spoofed the number. Still, I couldn't shake the unease crawling up my neck. I grabbed my cell and called my own home number. It rang 3 times, and then someone picked up. I heard my own voice say, "Hello." I nearly dropped the phone. It was unmistakably me. My tone, my voice, even the slight echo from the hardwood floors in my house. I hung up immediately and tried calling again. This time it went straight to voicemail. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself I was overtired, maybe imagining things, but I couldn't focus on work after that. So I left early. The drive home took about 15 minutes, and the whole time I kept thinking about what I'd heard. Maybe someone had broken in. Maybe I'd left the TV on. When I finally pulled into my driveway, everything looked normal. Lights off, door locked. Still, I approached slowly, flashlight in hand. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and whispered a shaky hello. No answer. The house was silent. Too silent. I checked the living room, the kitchen, even the small storage closet. Nothing. Then I reached my bedroom. My phone, the landline, was off the hook. The receiver lay on the floor, the cord twisted like someone had yanked it down in a hurry. I didn't touch it at first. I just stood there staring. And then, from somewhere deep in the house, came a faint click, like the sound of another phone hanging up. I turned around so fast I almost tripped. The sound had come from the basement, a place I rarely went because it was damp and half-finished. I could feel the air getting colder as I walked toward the basement door. My flashlight flickered once, then stabilized. When I opened the door, I immediately noticed something strange. The basement light was already on. I slowly went down the creaking wooden steps. At the bottom was an old workbench and a dusty metal shelf. And there, sitting on the shelf, was another phone, the same model as the one in my bedroom. Except this one wasn't connected to any outlet. It was just there, the cord cut, but the handset still glowing faintly red, like it was active. I remember whispering to myself, "What the hell?" before taking a single step closer. That's when the phone rang. Loud and shrill, echoing through the basement. My flashlight started flickering again. I backed up toward the stairs, heart pounding, and the ringing just kept going, until it stopped mid-tone like someone had picked it up. Then, in the dark, I heard a low voice say, "You shouldn't be here." I bolted up the stairs, slammed the basement door shut, and didn't stop running until I was outside, calling 911 for my car. When the police arrived, they found the basement door locked from the inside. They had to break it open, but the phone I'd seen on the shelf? Gone. No sign of forced entry, nothing stolen, no footprints. They chalked it up to stress or exhaustion, but I know what I heard. A week later, I got a call from a blocked number at the same hour, 2:30 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened the next morning, it was that same breathing, and faintly underneath it, my own voice whispering, "You shouldn't have gone downstairs." I moved out 3 days later. That house was torn down last year to make room for new condos, but every now and then, around 2:30 a.m., my phone lights up with a blocked call, and I can never bring myself to answer. You never really think about what's happening around you after midnight. You assume everyone's asleep, the streets are quiet, and the world is resting. But for some people, that's when things wake up. 3 stories, 3 different people, all experiencing something they'll never be able to explain. A knock at the door when no one was outside, a figure watching from the tree line, and a phone call from inside the house. These aren't stories from the internet. These were real experiences, submitted by Ethan P., Rebecca H., and Daniel R., who all swore what happened to them was true. Whether you believe them or not, remember this. Nighttime hides more than it reveals. And sometimes, the quietest hours are when the loudest things happen. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because I'll be sharing more true horror stories just like these every week. And who knows, maybe next time the story I read will be yours.